So I guess I don't know exactly what some of this is about. Um, I was just told, hey, you might be interested in something real time, and I don't. There's no issues here to read. So
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we've kind of basically designed the first feature. I believe we kind of built out the application part of the first feature. And the idea behind the feature is that we would have assignees on merge requests and issues updating in real time. So if you assign somebody by quick action or something like that currently, uh, there's the sidebar doesn't update. Um, when we picked like a pretty simple feature to start with. Uh, but the purpose of the working group is to get us to the point where we can build features in real time using WebSockets. So we've reached a couple of stumbling blocks in that, like, we've built the application side of things, but we need to figure out what are the things we need to do to get it deployed. The purpose of the working group is to get a feature to self-hosted customers. Uh, and I thought like the first iteration we could do would be to actually ship a WebSocket connection on the issues show page, but not actually do anything with it. So, provided we have observability built in, we should be able to see from that how many open connections we have to handle, what the load is on the various parts of the system. So Redis nodes, PubSub nodes. Uh, so we have a number of open questions like, should we be running separate app nodes for the application or for the Action Cable Puma servers to isolate this from web nodes or API nodes? What kind of observability do we need to build in? Can we reuse Redis nodes that we already have, or should we have separate nodes for WebSockets? So, yeah, there are no issues at the minute, just application issues to build that first feature. I think if the first thing we managed to do was to get those connections on issue show page, that would be good progress. So, yeah, if we could get that far, I think we're basically like pretty much most of the way to getting the first feature out.
cool. Um, first things off the top of my head. Yes, we already have one dedicated set of PubSub capable Redis servers. Um, we have three pools of we have three Redis clusters, one for caching, one for Sidekick, and one for general purpose. Uh, Adding another pool isn't terribly difficult. It depends on the load. The current load on I believe the PubSub stuff is all going to Sidekick right now. And so I guess it depends on how much additional load that would cause for GitLab.com. But spinning up an additional Redis cluster shouldn't be terrible.
So the issue, I think, is less on the infrastructure side and more on we need to add configuration for setting up another Redis node, right? Like, the application needs to support, like, I need I need to use this Redis instance for this Redis instance for this Redis instance for this, and this new one for this. Ben, are you sure the PubSub stuff's going to Sidekick? I thought it was going to the shared state one.
It might be both. Because
Okay.
I know Sidekick uses Redis as a PubSub queue.
Oh, right. Yeah, that's slightly different, I think. For the CI runner stuff, I'm looking, and I think it uses the shared state one.
Yeah.
But for Sidekick, I don't think we'd want to use the Sidekick ones for this, is what I'm saying. But we
No,
might
no,
want
no.
to use the
Yeah,
shared state one.
I agree. We would want to use the shared one. I don't know what their capacity is like these days. I know we're having capacity issues with the cache, but that is probably unrelated.
Yeah, let me just have a quick look at that, because we did have.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that I think our first goal here is really deploying this to GitLab.com and not really self-hosted, I guess, because similar to Puma, GitLab.com was the first one, and then we kind of learn how we configure it, and then we configure the defaults for Omnibus. But then the same thing, we still need a lot of work on Omnibus side to configuration options and that stuff. It's just disabled by default, and yeah, so that we can enable this on GitLab.com.
Yeah, it'd be great to have a group level feature flag so that we could canary this. My first question is there a design doc for how this actually works? Because I don't see like the real-time working group goes to a 404. So the page linked at the top of the about.gitlab.com URL is a dead link.
That will be merged when the MR for the working group is merged, but yeah, it just needs to be reviewed by Christopher. I can put in the link to the MR actually in the meantime.
And then my second question is if this is going to be a high socket connection concurrency service, would this be better done in Workhorse in Golang, where concurrency is not as big a problem?
Yes, I guess like the weighing in. Eventually, I think the goal is to put this into Anycable and Workhorse, just because like it's not scalable for how we want to use it. Action Cable, at least implementation is not. So that would be the ideal end state, I think. But Heinrich can correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, basically we chose Action Cable because it's not really tied to a specific implementation. It's more of like an API of how Rails sends messages and handles these channels, which are basically like subscriptions. And there is a gem. It's not from Rails project. It's a third-party one, but it's pretty popular, which is Anycable, which is basically they built an Action Cable API compatible WebSocket server that's written in Go. So we did initial evaluations, but thought that we'd start with Action Cable, plain Action Cable, the Ruby servers, because added complexity and stuff, and there are a lot of things that we don't really know right now. So that's why our goal is to get this on GitLab.com, see how bad or good the performance is, and then evaluate if we need to do that.
Sounds awesome. I'm just quickly getting familiar with it.
Also, regarding the architecture docs, or how the different components interact, it's actually like in different threads on the different issues. So yeah, it's good that you pointed that out. I should probably write something up in central, because it wasn't like final yet, and we were discussing which way to go, and but yeah, it's a good idea.
Yeah, no, that's what design docs are good for. Is it makes it easier to get a good overview of the whole thing and discuss it. Like you don't have to write the design doc and never update it. We can create it and update it as we change the architecture.
Yeah, but initially, just to give a quick overview, we decided because there are many ways to run Action Cable. It could be run on the same web servers like Puma, and it just spawns a different thread pool. But we ultimately decided we want a separate process, separate Puma process and server for this, just to increase isolation. So currently the architecture would be, at the Workhorse level, we have a reverse proxy. So Workhorse acts like a reverse proxy now, right? And we have a route there where //cable would proxy to the Action Cable Puma servers instead of the regular Rails server. And then those Action Cable Puma servers would handle the WebSocket connections. Yeah, that's the high level structure.
Sounds awesome to me. Something we can easily deploy into an auto scaling group in Kubernetes.
On the shared state thing, there is an issue currently open to move some things away from the Redis shared state instance. I don't think that's a blocker, but I might want to take that and go check if, you know, like if we add a new Redis instance, that's fine. If we use the existing one that we're using for CI, which is the shared state one, we might want to check if we do this first. But I assume that if it's only used behind a flag, it shouldn't be a huge issue either way, because it's not like we're gonna excessively load that one like from day one. So I'm just being like extra cautious there.
What do we need to do to decide like how many new API or new web nodes we need to run the Action Cable servers, even just to get this going? I know there was talk there of putting it in Kubernetes at some point, but like,
I think we should start directly in Kubernetes so that we can easily just scale up, because we can go from 1 to hundreds in seconds.
Do we have any? So I know we have some Sidekiq nodes in staging and maybe in production that are using Kubernetes. Do we have any web nodes that are using that at the moment? Do you know, Ben?
Not yet. It's on the to-do list. Yeah.
Okay, it's just my concerns slightly about coupling them, but also like if it makes sense to do that, we don't want to have to do the work twice by, you know, doing it once now, not in Kubernetes, and then adding it to Kubernetes in future. So, yeah. I mean, it probably does make sense. I'm just concerned that like we'd hit other issues. But on the other hand, if we put them in Kubernetes first, it's also a low stakes thing from the infra side for Kubernetes nodes, because it would be, I don't want to say non-critical, but it'd be flagged behind a feature flag.
Yep. Yeah. No, I think it would be a good test to start moving web stuff, and I've been trying to get the start of the Rails stack, and since this doesn't sound like it has any of the legacy dependencies on things like local files, it would be a good start to get the beta testing of running the Rails stack and running the Puma stack in Kubernetes. So it's a safer test than, say, running a web or API node.
You know which infra team would own that?
Of course, it's probably delivery, but we can try and get some other people to work on it. I've been trying to get them to shard out the load of moving stuff to Kubernetes outside of just Jarve and Skarbek. Because right now because they're the only ones doing the work, they're the bottleneck, and we need to get some volunteers to do other stuff. So finding somebody in infra to be to assign to specifically to do this in Kubernetes will give us the motivation to actually get it done.
Yeah. Okay.
We would still have to create like we'd still have to move the entire application into Kubernetes though, right, to run Action Cable, because it's dependent on the entire application.
Yes, it would be running a Puma container, so it'd be running the entire application, you know, but only executing subcomponents of it. But that's fine. There's already Docker images and stuff for this. That shouldn't be part of any of the blockers. Like if this is mostly going to be talking to Redis and not the database, I don't see too many blockers here. I don't know how much how many database accesses this is going to cause.
Yeah, it is going to cause some DB connections on subscribe when a client subscribes, because we need to check permissions and stuff like that. But yeah, minimal. But if we do the same configuration with our current Rails app, I mean, if we share the same database YAML just to simplify things and stuff from Omnibus side. Basically, the pool size would be like the same DB pool size, but yeah, we won't probably use all the DB connections there.
Yeah, and also we go through PG Bouncer, so they're not all necessarily actually. They're not direct database connections, but also it sounds like it's easy to calculate because if we just use the same configuration, it's just as if we were going to add some more web nodes. It's just these web nodes aren't used for web traffic. They're used for WebSocket traffic, which is easy for us to calculate.
And if you had these extra nodes, the only like extra configuration I would assume would be like HA proxy stuff, right? To like proxy these routes to these nodes.
Well, Workhorse would be doing that.
Oh, so, okay. So we won't have Workhorse running on these. I thought it was like HA proxy, like splitting it into the multiple action cable nodes, and then the action cable nodes each have their own Workhorse. Or
yeah, I think we use HA proxy for the API and web split, don't we, Ben?
Yeah.
Because that's not, yeah.
So yeah, I guess we probably would need some HA proxy routing changes.
One question I have, just like having looked at benchmarks, I think we're at some point in the near future we'll run into performance problems with Action Cable. Like, how much of the work are we doing now are we gonna have to throw away if we like switch to any cable or integrating that into Workhorse? I just don't want to do a bunch of rework right out of the gate for what we kind of can know based on data we can look at that will be performance bottlenecks, specifically memory.
That's a good question. I can't answer that, but I can. Is there a way we can determine how many requests and how many connections we're going to need based on the existing API traffic?
it's hard to tell because we don't know how many like tabs users keep open, and
If it's if it's anything like what I've seen in customers and myself, 20 to 30 tabs at any given time. But part of the reason of doing this is to make it so that we can update things in real time without having to maintain separate tabs. But
can we use so there's a thing that in an issue, so if we just limit to issues, there's a thing that polls an endpoint for description updates. So we know that if that's being polled, someone's on an issue page. But I guess we don't know. I don't know if we poll that in background tabs. Is that your point, Heinrich?
I'm not sure, but yeah, I think Chrome or something scales down the polling rate if it's in the background tab, but it still polls. Not sure.
I think we do that as well. Like we don't. There's definitely some in our application because we don't want background tabs to be like, if someone has 20 tabs open, we don't want all of those to be like just requesting every second. I think we have something that only does it when you switch back to the tab. So maybe that wouldn't work.
That should combining them. Yeah, that should give us at least a rough idea.
Yeah, I think it would probably be an undercount, but as long as we know it's an undercount, like as long as we know it's a lower bound, we're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even if we had the count, then we don't really know how much Action Cable can take, right? I mean, unless we do another like profiling of Action Cable and stuff like that. I mean, there are blog posts, but pretty old, so I'm not sure if it's updated, and feel like it's even easier to just deploy it rather than going through that.
Getting a rough order of magnitude is probably good enough. Like, are we going to need 10 CPUs, 100 CPUs, 1,000 CPUs? Just like a bare basic rough number of resources. just so that we're not off by 10x.
What
I mean,
sorry.
I was just gonna say I want to keep it simple for the first one, but also be realistic about what we want to use the service for, and which is, at least in my stage, I know Create has a bunch of things within Mars they want to do, but you know, more or less make everything on issues real time, make issue boards real time, make like as much stuff as we can in the application, push through this, so we don't have to do like a bunch of page reloads to get accurate information. So that's one thing, and the other was I don't know how it works, but typically when I've done stuff like this in the past on the client side, at least, like I maintain the state or the cache in local storage, and so that way, like it, no matter where it updates or which tab, that local storage is shared across all tabs, so it like will automatically update across all tabs without each one having to like maintain its own separate state. So that could also be another optimization to look at.
Yeah, but also regarding the initial question about like how much we're going to like throw away if ever we switch. So basically what would happen is that we keep the application code the same because it's, you know, Action Cable. And then the thing that would change is instead of running a Puma server, we would be running the AnyCable server, which is like single Go binary. I don't think we'd ever want this to be built into Workhorse or something. I don't see the gains that we do with that, and it's just more, you know, things to maintain and stuff. And aside, so the AnyCable Go server runs the WebSocket part, so it like holds WebSocket connections, it spawns Go routines for every WebSocket connection, and things like that, and connects to Redis for PubSub. And but the Rails, it needs Rails, right? So it also needs a gRPC server. So if we could also run these gRPC servers for AnyCable on the same and Action Cable nodes, or it could be a completely separate set of nodes. But yeah, mostly configuration changes would be needed if we wanted to switch.
If we did it through Kubernetes, though, couldn't we just scale down the number of pods that use Action Cable and scale up the ones that use AnyCable because the application interface is the same? What I'm wondering, though, is like, even if we do it through Kubernetes, how do we ensure that we're not competing with, so we'll have a fixed number of nodes anyway, so even if we need to scale up the number of pods, we'd still be competing with the Sidekick implementation as it is. So how do we also increase the number of nodes, or do we have to?
SRE will just take care of that.
Cool. Great, that's a good answer. Cool. And then
I don't think we're running auto scaling nodes at this time, but yeah, as we're moving things in, we're keeping a careful eye on the resource utilization of the underlying clusters.
Cool. And then how, this is maybe getting into the weeds a bit, but how is service discovery done through Kubernetes at the minute? Because this the Action Cable servers will need access to the Redis cluster, which presumably isn't in Kubernetes yet.
No, right now I think that's a good question. I don't remember exactly how we're. I'd have to look that up, but we are building out Consul as a service discovery bridge between Kubernetes services and the rest of the Chef stuff, the legacy stuff. Worst case, we use a GCP internal load balancer if that's a viable option. But we also have Sentinel, so that at least for Redis, we have Sentinel in front of actual Redis.
Okay, cool. We're kind of running up against time, so I'm wondering, like, what are the next steps? Like, what actions can we take? Should we create some, like, an issue in the delivery groups backlog to, I guess, move forward with the Kubernetes stuff?
I think the delivery stuff could start even if the application part isn't fully complete, right? I mean, we're not yet fully done, but it's almost done. But then I'm just saying, you know, I'm not.
Yeah,
I'm just making sure I won't be blocking.
I think creating an issue for delivery makes sense, but like Ben says, like potentially, like say to them, like, you know, if another infra team can do this, that would be great, because that's also like, you know, knowledge sharing. But I think starting with them makes sense, as they're owning the Sidekiq Kubernetes rollout.
Yeah, I think this is something to bring to like the infra management, Brent and Anthony and Dave. Because I really do think we need to take some of the load off the delivery team here.
Is there a way that we could help with the Kubernetes work? Because,
Yeah,
most of it.
definitely. I don't know how, and I don't know exactly how this would start, but that's definitely a conversation we should have.
Cool. We didn't get a chance to talk about observability. Could we like do a quick could we do a quick thing on that, just even a ballpark to figure out what we should be looking to include, or where we should look for information on what we should include in this?
I've never really looked into what to monitor with WebSocket stuff, other than keeping track of how many connections you've got and the general latency of requests going through that request pipeline.
Yeah, I'm also not sure if we get this for free already because we use Puma, or is there something else we need to work on here to get the action cable number of connections? But yeah, I think we need to add something else, but I'm not sure.
Some of the stuff should come for free with the existing Puma, but I don't know, since I've never really looked at Action Cable, I don't know what it gives us.
Yeah, I wouldn't imagine we'd get number of connected clients automatically, which is one thing we definitely want, right?
Yeah, because it spawns its own thread pool and then handles connections there, so it's not the default stuff.
Yeah, so we'd probably want at least that, I guess. And I'm sure it has a way to like hook into that, and then we can send that to Prometheus to track that.
Okay, cool. We're at time. Thanks everyone for showing up. I'll create the follow-up issue with delivery, and also probably one for observability as well, so that we can capture some of the information here. Thanks for your time.